Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Central Dauphin High School Concert Band's first spring concert. The group you heard just there was the Central Dauphin High School Concert Percussion Ensemble. That piece was entitled Technology, by a gentleman who, Mr. Cassells, who writes for Tap Space Percussion. For anybody who is fans of video games in the Mortal Kombat series, I do believe he took some inspiration from that melody and that piece from that soundtrack. So right now we are bringing up the concert band, the freshman concert band. We'll be back with you in just a moment. So ladies and gentlemen, if you've been around the Central Albany School Band program, you've heard that tune before. That is a standard staple in the Mr. Tate repertoire. It is a gorgeous pieces, as Air for Band by Frank Erickson. Hope you enjoyed that. The next tune, I'm going to be stepping off stage for because I have no use. Because for this group that you see before you, I had the privilege of, at the beginning of the year, a student coming to me and going, "Hey, Mr. Tate, I'm not doing anything fourth period. I have a study hall. Can I aid for you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And what turned into the simple request turned into, "Do you want to learn how to conduct?" "Sure." "Do you want to do this?" "Sure." "Do you want to lead some sectionals?" "Sure." This young lady has never said no. And because of that, I said, "Do you want to conduct on the concert?" Whereupon her eyes got a little big, but then also said, "Sure." So I introduce to you, conducting Afterburn by Mr. Randall Standridge, Miss Bella Wall. seeing that process takes place, watching a student musician, student leader, student conductor take the reins. As a teacher, it's very gratifying to see everything that Bella has learned. So give her one more round of applause. Now one more for concert band too as well. That's fantastic. Right now, symphonic band, come on up. We're just going to do a quick scene change, and we'll continue with the symphonic band portion of the concert. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be playing for you a couple of tunes that I discovered last year, actually. So the first tune is actually by a gentleman that visits campus, not regularly, but regularly enough, by the name of Travis Weller. Dr. Weller is one of the illustrious music professors over at Messiah University. He is also a nationally and internationally known composer that's right in our backyard. So it's really cool to find music by him to play with our bands. So he was here actually conducting the County Band Festival for us last year. This piece came out a while ago. I knew about it, but I never performed it with a band. So the first piece we're going to be doing is A New Day Breaking. And then the second piece we're going to be doing is actually one that he programmed for the band that he was conducting. I first heard it on the festival, and I went, we have the music. Let's play this. So the second one you're going to hear is Softly Speaks the Night, which if you were here for the County Band Festival, you might have heard as well too. So those are two pieces we're going to perform for you here. So ladies and gentlemen, we're on to the last one for Symphonic Band. Hold on your seatbelts. This last piece is a lot of fun. There are a gaggle of percussionists involved, which is something that's really fun to tell people the way we do bands here at Central Dauphin High School. The percussion players that you see in the back, they are a separate class. They do not rehearse with the wind players. We literally do that in class by ourselves. We learn percussion ensemble music. We learn a lot of things about percussion instruments and how to play them and play them well. And then right before the concert, so today's Wednesday, literally yesterday after school, we came together for the first time and put what you hear tonight together. So can we have a round of applause for all of our percussionists? And then also, I would be remiss, there are two extra tuba players in the back. One, Kevin Grudges and Andrew Krautheim. Andrew is a euphonium player with the wind ensemble. And between Alan and the other two there, they are a fantastic tuba section. But I did not include them in the program because I always make mistakes in the program. So my apologies to them. But can we give a round of applause for Kevin and Andrew? So the last tune, Jungle Dance, by Brian Balmages, is super fun. You are going to hear about 4 different melodies in this entire tune. And what he does, Mr. Balmages, presents them by themselves, but also on top of other melodies. And then at the end, you will hear all 4 melodies at the same time. And then there's a party of percussion in the back. So ladies and gentlemen, this is Jungle Dance. at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to invite up the Central Dauphin High School Wind Ensemble. We're just going to do our last set change of the evening. Bear with us for a few minutes. So while they're getting set up, I'm going to introduce our first piece. So there's a number of things we're going to be doing with Wind Ensemble they've always wanted to do. They're fine, they'll get themselves set up. One of the things we do in class, which I always believe that what we do in class should be reflected on what we do in concert, right? About 1/5 of what we do is sight reading. The students you see before you, we have a pretty vast library at Central Dauphin High School, a library of music. We read a bunch. They sight read probably about 25 to 30 different pieces throughout the year. And of those, we pick the 12, 15 that we want to work on. We've never ever sight read on a concert before. And one of the things that I've seen done by a few directors, only a few crazy ones of us, is that they will sight read the entire year. That is what they practice. And then on the concert, they will sight read the entire concert because that's what they practice. It's a lot like an English class. You read a whole bunch of different novels and you're able to understand them right away. That's essentially what we do inside of Wind Ensemble. So by pure chance, one of the solo instruments that was in one of the pieces that we had programmed for tonight, he had some issues that he had to take care of, so I said, we need to pick a new piece. Let's sight read it. And I told them about this. So this piece that I'll be handing out, this will literally be the first and a half. So we read it once in class, whenever I sprung it on them. And then we read it about a half time today on stage just to get the balance. And then I collected it. I have never heard them practice so much in those 30 seconds while I was collecting music. So this piece by Carl King, it's a march entitled The Trombone King. We're happy to show you and show you our reading ability as well as what we do in class every Friday for Sight Reading Friday. Pretty cool, huh? Every Friday is a fun day. Every Friday is a fun day because we get to experience all different kinds of music that we might not actually play on stage, but makes us better musicians, makes us be able to do what we just did for you. So you can put that in your folder. Hold on, I'm not going to collect it. Also, I want to. She's probably going to give me daggers, but Lizzie Wheat. Whenever we first read this piece, she was absent, and then whenever we read it today on stage, she was also absent. So Lizzie was actually truly sight reading this today. So bravo.
So David Gillingham was the composer of that. He wrote that after a close friend of his passed away. I don't think I need to explain anything more than that, other than I hope you felt everything that we tried to convey through that piece, and the beauty that is At Morning's First Light. This brings us to the end of the concert. So I told you that there are a couple of things that I've always wanted to do, one of which being sight read on a concert. Check that box. The next one, an experience that really shaped and changed the way I thought about a holistic education and what that means, was one that I took place in my junior year of high school. A gentleman by the name of Jack Stamp was our guest conductor at Region Band. And he did this exercise with us on stage. This was, I went over with them. They've at least been through it. But you have no idea what I'm about to do. And we didn't either on stage until he was standing in front of us in a 1,000-person auditorium filled to the brim, standing room only in the back. And he said, music education is the only thing that in A will not be acceptable. 100% is the only thing that music requires. And whenever you hear that, you're like, huh? You can get 100 in school. However, we have to get 100% each day. And I'll show you how. So we have one more piece for you, Gallup Festivo. We're going to play 8 bars for you. This is measures 41 through 49. 41 through 49. This is a rip-roaring piece. You're going to love it. So, here, we're going to. Or what was it? Is it 25? Oh no! This is correct. This is correct. Yeah, this is correct. So play it as here we go. That's great. Yeah, 41 through 40. You remember the things right now? Yeah. Here we go. 41 through 40. Ready? So that was 100%. So over the course of those 8 bars, generally speaking, we have between 4 and 16. The woodwinds have a lot more than that, probably like 32 notes per bar. So if we were to take this in a percentage, okay, and we were to play this 95% correct, by my guesstimation, that would be 2 wrong notes per the entire 8 bars. What would that sound like? 2 wrong notes. Ready? It's always a trombone player that picks the last note. So that's generally a 95%. You can hear the piece and you can hear the wrong notes. And I made sure. I told them, I said, seriously, only choose 2 wrong notes. That we want to make this like as realistic as possible. So that's a 95. If we were to get a B, I rounded down for the A, so it's actually closer to 3 wrong notes, but I didn't want to do this. But B worthy is 5 wrong notes. Wonder what that sounds like. So anyway, Mr. Stamp did this on stage with some of the best musicians in Pennsylvania. And he did it to make a point. In music, we literally have to strive for excellence in everything we play. We have to give 100% 100% of the time. And that they've heard that phrase numerous times. I got that from Jack Stamp that day. We have to strive for 100% of the time. Because if we don't, the people to the left and the right of us are going to be let down. That is what makes the world a great place. That is why music is more than just music. And that is why music is important. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed Gallup Festivo. Thank you for coming out tonight. Here we go. 100% this time. gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. Drive safe, and we'll see you in May. Thank you very much.